Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a walk through the front lines in the Ukraine war on 28th of October 2022. The long and the short of it is not a lot of changes happened at all on the front lines, but there's a few points that are worthy of discussion. First of all, the Russians have hit some key parts of the energy infrastructure uh, that have, some argue have caused more damage to the energy infrastructure than all the previous hits combined. So overnight, the Kyivskaya 750 substation was hit, but also the Belostkovskaya substation. And as this person here says, today's strike had a much greater impact in terms of efficiency than all previous strikes on the Kyiv power hub combined. And there are sort of rolling power cuts at the moment going on. So this article says, overview of the Russian strikes on October 28th, major blow to Ukrainian energy system in Kyiv. During the night attack, Russian kamikaze UAV struck facilities in the Kyivskaya substation. At least one 750-330 kilovolt auto transformer was destroyed, according to a local report. The smaller Belotserkovskaya substation was also hit by Russian UAVs. This was a strategic blow in the energy system of Ukraine. The Russian forces had cut the Kiev energy district off of 1,000 MVA of power from the Rivne and Khelnitsky nuclear power plants. A wave of unplanned power outages hit the capital and the region. The Kyiv region has other smaller sources of energy generation. Some of them were already struck by Russian forces. Today, the energy is clearly not enough for the normal operation of the power system. The Ukrainian authorities reported that as a result of the missile and UAV attacks, rolling blackouts throughout the capital and the Kyiv region are expected to last for a long time. Kyiv is not able to stabilize the situation with energy supply in the nearest future. Electricity consumption will be limited in Kyiv as well as Chernihiv, Cherkasy, and Zhytomyr regions. The idea here is that, I suppose, from my point of view, well, is this does this count as a war crime? Almost certainly, yes. Hitting civilian energy infrastructure far away from the front lines is clearly not a military target, and this will affect the operation of hospitals, the operation of civilian life in this region of the country that is nowhere near any of the military conflict that is going on at the moment. And in fact, well, this is a war crime, and there you go. There needs to be even greater assistance to Ukraine in terms of taking out these UAVs and missiles that are able to hit sort of anywhere within the interior of the country. That's a huge problem. So this is Russia taking out the energy infrastructure and arguably crippling Ukraine in non-military ways, economic certainly, and obviously civilian life is hugely affected. So just moving on to another bit of news that might affect the front lines, which is Ukraine is forming a new elite air mobile brigade, so an airborne brigade. It should strengthen Ukraine's amphibious assault potential as well. The new 77th Brigade will be based in Zhytomyr, where Ukraine's only training center for airborne assault troops is located. The 1st Battalion of 77th Air Mobile Brigade recently completed basic training in the UK, while the 2nd and 3rd Battalions are currently formed. While the 2nd and 3rd Battalions are currently formed. This is not the first Ukrainian airborne unit to train in the UK. Some units of the 46th Airborne Brigade also trained there. So just to let you know, this is where Zhytomyr is, and that is where the new airborne units will be based, but they are being trained or have been trained in the UK. So that's good news for the capability of the Ukrainian forces. If we go to the front lines, literally, as far as I can work out, nothing has really changed. Weather has been very muddy. The conditions are very muddy, even though weather is seen to be improving. It's pretty difficult conditions to move around. If we look up the sort of Kupiansk down to Svatove, down to Kreminna front line, okay, just to remind you, and let's get our map with everything on so you can see. just to remind you that there is this P66 highway down there, the Krasna River down here, and the Kherson River down here. And it's these towns along the Kherson that the Russians claim they've been attacking, but the Ukrainians haven't sort of admitted that they've lost control of. But there's really confusing data coming out of here. And again, we look at this pocket from Torsky to Terny to Nevsky and Dubrova. So it looks like the Ukrainians have recaptured Dubrova, but then the Russians are claiming that they are controlling certain areas around here. It's a little bit confusing. So if you look at Rybar, which is the pro-Russian source, there are things like enemy command plans to simultaneously attack from northwest of Terny and east of Nevsky. Okay, so let's have a look at what that means. So east of Nevsky is here. Well, this is where the Russians yesterday claimed they had control. So if the Ukrainians are attacking from the east of there, then obviously the Russians don't control that. But northwest of Terny is over here behind these lakes. So I'm just a little bit unsure of kind of what's going on here. I'm not going to change anything. The Russians are also admitting that their attack still towards Chervona Popivka, and in fact, we've got so here's a Russian pro-Russian report from yesterday saying after a daily lull, the enemy resumed attacks in the north of the MVO zone. Formations of the Kiev regime are trying to break through to the crossroads of Krasnorechensky, Makivka, Chernov, Chervona Popivka. The threat of the enemy breakthrough at Chervona Popivka from the northwest remains. So they're saying, all right, we still got worries about here. They are trying to break across, and there's admission that the Ukrainians are attacking towards Zhitlivka as well. So this is continuing, whilst the Russians are also claiming, pro-Russian channels claiming that the Russians have control of all these settlements along the Kherson again. It's just very confusing. And that again, Makivka is under threat. I haven't changed my map at all from yesterday because I'm just waiting for decent information. If we go back north to just north of Svatove, we have the understanding that in Kuzamivka, and this is from a couple of days ago, local government has shut down in the town and it's evacuated its people. It's on the front line. Yes, it's on the front line. We haven't heard a lot coming out there, but the Russians are still saying that Ukrainians are hitting towards Orliansky and Mykolaiivka, which is just sort of Svatove is back down here. So this is that northern. So there's Svatove. Here we've got the Vilshani, Pershotrav, Nevi settlements are in the grey zone, and the Ukrainians are pushing east here. But again, not a lot of detail at all. Something that is worth mentioning, this is the Institute for the Study of War talking about this particular area. And I'll read out what they say. Russian sources continue to claim that Ukrainian forces conducted counteroffensive operations northeastern Kharkiv Oblast. The Russian Ministry of Defense and other sources claim that Ukrainian forces unsuccessfully attacked Russian positions in the direction of Mykolaiivka and Orlianka. So Orliansky, that's what I was just telling you, both just east of Kupiansk and 30 kilometers northwest of Svatove. Russian military bloggers circulated footage of the Russian forces firing a TOS-1 thermobaric multiple launch rocket system at Ukrainian positions, reportedly in the direction of the Svatove-Kreminna highway. The TOS-1 is notably a military district level asset, which many indicate either that Russian forces are allocating high-level artillery systems to this area due to an intent to prioritize operations in this area, or that Russian forces lack sufficient artillery systems or ammunition more appropriate for standard fire missions of the Svatove-Kreminna axis. So thermobaric, TOS-1 thermobaric systems are pretty horrible systems to use. Sorry, that's my bad spelling there. So here's a TOS-1, and you might have seen these captured, but also in use, particularly in Mariupol. They were talked about a lot down there, and these create really high intensity explosions that sort of vaporize um, the places that are hit. Now, why this is interesting? What Institute for the Study of War is saying is if these are kind of starting to be used around here, that either says that the Russians are seeing this as a much bigger area of concern, so that they're bringing in some of these quite high level artillery pieces, or they are running out of basic artillery, either ammunition or artillery pieces. That they're being degraded so much around here that they're having to bring in the thermobaric munitions. My guess is the latter. Like I just think I was talking about this yesterday. How there's such a degradation going on a weekly basis that you're starting to see, helicopters in the Kherson area being used to support the ground troops because they can't use artillery because they're running out of artillery or running out of munitions. So they're bringing other things into a more risky situation than they would otherwise be in. So the same here. They're starting to bring in possibly starting to bring in thermobaric munitions because they're running out of either ammunition or ordnance or the artillery pieces to do your basic artillery work around here. I don't think that the thermobaric missiles would be the sorts of things you'd use in this open field area. Um, they strike me as pieces of munition that you would, or artillery that you would use against much more densely urban areas. So I think that that's an interesting observation from the ISW. So again, as we go down south, there won't be a lot of change. So as we go down towards Kreminna, Svatove, down towards Kreminna. And again, if you look at what Rybar say, none of what Rybar said in the last day talks about offensives of the Russians in this area. It's all about repelling Ukrainian offenses. So the Russians appear to be on the defensive around there. So it claims about them taking areas around Kreminna. I just take them with a pinch of salt. But I think as I say again, it's difficult to get, really confirming information about much in the area. So here is a Ukrainian source saying Bars 13, the Russian battalion commander, Sergei Fomchenkov, call sign Fomich, whose troops are defending Kreminna, says they expect an assault on the Kreminna-Svatove highway at any time in the Zitlivka area, which I showed you, and says his troops are prepared to defend. Tendar says if you follow the Russian radio transmissions, then you can retrieve the following information. The Russian tactic at each active front line is just to dig in and hope for bad weather. They have given up all major offensives and hope to exhaust Ukrainian attacks. Is this the idea that they're going to dig in for the winter and stop going on large offensives themselves, or that they don't really have the capability for these offensives? We shall see. But as I say, the same old at the moment, which is not a lot of change. Bilorivka again fighting around there, but again no change. Bakhmut. There's an interesting AP Associated Press article on Russia's hope for Ukraine win revealed in the battle for Bakhmut. While much of the fighting in the last month has unfolded in southern Ukraine's Kherson region, the battle heating up around Bakhmut demonstrates Russian President Putin's desire for visible gains following weeks of clear setbacks in Ukraine. This is the idea that Bakhmut is one of the only places that Russia seems to have made progress over the last few months, although they've had a setback in the last few days, this last week. Taking Bakhmut would rupture Ukraine's supply lines and open a route for Russian forces to press on toward Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, key Ukrainian strongholds in Donetsk province. Pro-Moscow separatists have controlled part of Donetsk and neighboring Luhansk province since 2014. Okay, so this is about the visuals for the Russians, because actually, they've not really got anything to shout about. So Putin was talking yesterday about what's been going on for the last 10 months and painting everything as a moral sort of imperative for Russia against the West. But visually speaking, Bakhmut is the only thing that they've advanced only place that they've advanced in any significant way, but it's not significant. They've advanced in terms of meters, the same with Avdiivka around here. Yes, Bakhmut will be useful for then moving on to. They can't move on to Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and these key sort of uh, towns here without Bakhmut. So Bakhmut is key to these areas, but it just they're going nowhere. So I don't. Yeah, that's why I keep saying they're banging their head against a brick wall. Just and then you look at the Wagner line as being a defensive line going up down here and across there, and you're thinking, well, what really are your intentions? Do you really want to go towards Sloviansk and Kramatorsk? Is that a realistic goal of yours? Then why are you building all these defensive lines to show that you actually are looking to keep the 2014 annexed regions, and you're expecting attacks rather than you going on the attack yourself? Anyway, so there you go. No change in the front lines anywhere really, and coming down to Kherson again, similar news from yesterday. It seems like they are putting defensive. Well, they're working to defend the city of Kherson, the Russians, but this should be where we will see the Russians degraded seriously, because they are cut off by this river, the bridges and the barge crossings and ferry crossings being continually hit. Apparently they have now got something like 70,000 people. It's difficult to be able to verify any of this information out of Kherson. So the Russians have claimed that they've finished the evacuation of civilians. So this is now, a military area. This is a battle zone in waiting, and we could have a city battle in the future weeks, and that will be very costly for both sides. But to take Kherson in a frontal assault will cost the Ukrainians a lot. They've already had some degradation of munitions around here and mechanized units, as well as the Russians themselves. That will be too costly for a full frontal assault, in my opinion, and I would think about ways of being able to encircle it. But the problem is you need to get across this river. So here we have a bit of an issue, is that how do the Ukrainians take Kherson without being easily able to get across the river? Because as soon as they start trying to bridge the river, they can be hit by Russian artillery in the same way that they hit the Russians. So how do they take Kherson other than to take it in a frontal assault? And that would be bad news, in my opinion. But there you go. We'll see what happens in Kherson. We can speculate, but all it is speculation at the moment. I will try and give you a sort of a more I'd say a better update tomorrow, an update with more information. There's just a complete lack of information along the front lines at the moment, which shows that they're either stagnant or they've just got very tight operational security, or both. Anyway, please check out my Ukraine War update extra that will come out later, that gives you some of the juicy nuggets to do with the front lines and the war going on in Ukraine. As ever, thank you for your support. Take care, and I will speak to you later.